Others were just drums.
Yeah.
So I didn't do much with it. That's disappointing.
Have you ever had a chance to read any of those books? Or
I read the Nightmare Fair novelisation because they asked me to review it, and I enjoyed it. I remember being quite excited when I read the script for it, and was looking forward to doing it. Some few weeks afterwards. There we are.
People have said, or there have been comments that one of the problems with Trial of a Time Lord is that there were so many bits and pieces cut together in order to have this trial umbrella theme that it was confusing for the actors to know what was going on at various points in the story. Was that true?
No, I mean, it's not confusing for the actors because we film in bits anyway. I mean, you know, one day we're filming a sequence where you go into the TARDIS, and the next day you're shooting a sequence that relates to a scene that you shot 2 weeks earlier anyway. As actors, you're always shooting in bits, and it's up to you to keep a track of the story. I think the only perhaps problem of making it bitty was that as a program you would just get into a drama sequence and something that was happening, and so then you were thrown back out again, back into the trial. And whether or not that was necessarily the best tack to be taking, I don't know, but it definitely wasn't confusing for the actors any more than the other episodes.
I was very confused by it. I hate to be telling a different story, but I had a slightly different problem, particularly in Mindwarp, where I don't want to go into great details about the story, but there was a point where I said to Eric Saywood, our script editor, I said, when I'm tying Peri up onto this rock and hurling abuse at her and torturing her and threatening to betray her, am I A, doing it for some subtle motive of my own, because I think I'm being watched or something like that? B, am I doing it because I've been affected by the mind probe, therefore I'm a bit kind of dippy? C, is the Matrix lying? Did this actually happen or not? Those are the three alternatives as I saw it. He said, well, I don't know, you better ask Philip Martin. So I got in touch with Philip Martin and asked Philip Martin, who'd written the script, and I gave him those three alternatives. He said, well, I don't know, he said, Eric wrote the trial stuff, and all the Matrix stuff was added on afterwards. You better ask him. I said, well, he told me to ask you. So I went back again and spoke to John Nathan and Eric. And John said, well, Eric, which is it? And he said, oh, whichever you like. This is the level of involvement at that time. I mean, Mr. Saywood isn't exactly my favourite person for a variety of reasons. He was going through his own problems with John Nathan Turner at that time. They were disagreeing about all sorts of things. But I felt that was all very sloppily handled. It was cobbled together a bit. The stories had been written independently, and then the umbrella theme of the trial was put on top of it. And at some point, somebody must have known what was going on there. And I chose to believe, the only way I could play it was to play that it was absolutely for the truth, and that it was the Matrix lying, so that when I was doing the scenes, it was genuine. I really was betraying Peri and killing her, because it never happened, therefore I could do it. It was a figment of the Valeyard's tampering with the Matrix. But it was quite difficult, and you expect people who write things to know why they're writing them. It's not always the case.
It's a bit actually like suddenly being revealed later that I ended up being married to Yukanos.
Yeah, that was really cheap.
When we were never playing that.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I might have played a couple of scenes slightly differently if that's the way things were going. And it was not the original way that script was written. It was not the way that either of us were playing it.
Well, you sort of can tell that it's just tacked on the end, really.
It was to deal with the fact that
that was my fault.
Very upset.
It was my fault again, because I said at the end, I said, no mention is made of whether what happened to Peri is true or false. If the Matrix has been lying, we need to tie up the end. And they said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I want to know, what was your intention? I said, well, do you think she should survive? They asked me. And I said, well, I'd like Peri to survive, because I like her, then she can come back. Because I knew Bonnie was going to be around.
Oh, the tape is stopped.
One of the things you said the other night was that the BBC probably won't bring back Doctor Who, but they'll probably bring back something else to replace it. How would you feel if that something else could be perhaps The Stranger? And would you would both of you consider coming back to do it?
I think there would be absolutely no point in the BBC bringing back The Stranger, because if they can do that, they might as well bring back Doctor Who.
It's not necessarily Doctor Who.
I know it's not, but
It could be a lower budget.
but whatever fiction we all put together for the purposes of avoiding
Legal
litigation, nonetheless, the similarities are so close that they might as well use the product they've got, and also then they can tap into all the mythology that goes with it, the 30 years of it. I wasn't the one who said they'd bring back something similar. I think they'll either bring back Doctor Who, or they'll bring back something totally different, or they'll start something totally different.
It was like the attempt at Space Cops, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Star Trek.
Speaking
Every
of,
now and then the BBC have dabbled in sci-fi. A series called Moonbase years ago, which I've never seen shown in any conventions. They did 2 or 3 series of it.
it was destroyed, that's why.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the BBC wiped it all.
Like they did with the early episodes of Doctor Who?
Oh,
Yes,
quite
exactly.
much.
They discovered they can erase tapes.
This is how we like it.
Fun.
Speaking of development of the Doctor, how did you get the part in the Ultimate Adventure, and did you feel that redressed some way that you really wanted to play the Doctor if it had gone on as a series? If you had gone on in the series?
Well, I got the part because when they decided to do the piece, they approached all the doctors, basically, kind of blanket, would you be interested in doing a stage show? And I think at that time 2 of them said yes. That was Pertwee and myself, said yes, we'd be interested. And because Terence Dix, who wrote it, had worked with Pertwee extensively, he was keener to write it for Pertwee. So that they went down the Pertwee path, as it were. But just as it was beginning, John said that 3 months was his maximum. They wanted to get 6 months out of it. So they asked me if I'd do the second half of the tour. So I said yes, I would. And then I met up with Terence Dix, who asked me what alterations I would like to make to the script. And it struck me there's no point in making any at all, really. If he would trust me to change the few lines here and there that were hyper-pert, as it were. Things like reversing polarities and neutron flows. But even then, I just changed that to reverse the linearity of the proton flow or something, as a kind of homage. But the only change I made was I had all the lines that Pertwee had written all over the set rubbed out, because I could remember them. Sorry, John. And developed a different relationship with Zog. I think John felt that Zog was, for those of you who don't know, Zog was this little furry alien who was an extra companion. And Zog majored in Cutesville, you see. It was a female actually, but this little tiny furry thing that was extremely cute, and I think John thought it was distracting from his charm as the Doctor, so he tended to ignore it when it was capering about. And I thought there were endless possibilities for humour with this little creature, so we built up a rather good relationship. Enjoyed that.
For Nicola, how did you, as far as in the series as Peri, you had a lot of screening to do. Now, how did you feel about Miss Brown? Was she more the character that you would have liked portrayed in Doctor Who?
When I, to take some right back to the end, when I first auditioned for Peri, the original description was a tall, long, blonde, leggy Californian. So yeah, I can play that. So, but the character wasn't particularly well formed, and as the auditions went on over a period of 2 or 3 months, I finally got to read the first draft of Planet of Fire. And I based my whole sort of background of Peri on that one story, which I thought she was obviously an intelligent young girl, had intelligent parents, extremely unhappy family background, young, naive, I should imagine from a rather sort of sheltered upbringing, but a spunky little kid. So I thought there was a good chance of taking this somewhere because A, it was sort of like the beginning of her growth period mentally. That she could like team up with someone like the Doctor would be a wonderful new opening experience to her. And if she starts out as a courageous, plucky kid, well then she's obviously going to expand from that. And I like the fact that in the very first story she was like